Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into the world of DAWs today.
Digital audio workstations.
Right, and specifically, we're going to try to help you figure out how to choose one.
That's a big decision.
Yeah, it can be,
Yeah.
especially if you're just starting out.
So many options.
Exactly. So to help us out today, you've sent us a link to an Italian YouTube tutorial about choosing and installing DAWs. I'm really excited to dig into this and see what we can learn.
Sounds like a good starting point.
Yeah.
This YouTuber seems to have a really dedicated following.
Yeah, his name is Claudio, and he's creating a video course called Mixiamo Insieme, which I guess means...
Let's mix together.
Okay, cool. So in this video, he's talking about choosing a DAW, and one thing he emphasizes is that different DAWs
Cater to different needs and project types.
Exactly. And Claudio even compares choosing a DAW to...
Searching on Google.
Yes. There's just so much out there, you know? He actually mentions some big names like
Studio One.
Ableton Live Pro Tools.
GarageBand.
Yeah, lots of options. He even recommends a website that compares the top 12 DAWs. So if you want to check that out, we'll be sure to include the link in the show notes.
That's a great resource for anyone feeling a bit overwhelmed.
Yeah, for sure. Now, Claudio seems pretty passionate about one DAW in particular, Reaper.
Yeah, I noticed that.
He really emphasizes its versatility and affordability.
And you can use the free trial version indefinitely.
Indefinitely.
Really? That's right. And if you want to keep using it after the trial period, you can unlock the full version with just a small donation.
Wow, that's pretty amazing, especially if you're just starting out and not sure if you want to commit to a specific DAW yet.
Exactly. No pressure.
And Claudio even mentions that Reaper has tons of tutorials available online.
Oh, yeah. Like where?
He specifically recommends the Reaper Maniac channel. Apparently, it's a great resource for learning all the ins and outs of Reaper.
I have to check that out. I've heard good things about Reaper.
Yeah, it seems to have a pretty strong user community.
Which is really important when you're learning a new DLW. Having that support system can make all the difference.
Absolutely. Now, before we get too deep into the specifics of Reaper, I think it's important to take a step back and make sure we're all on the same page.
Okay, yeah, that's a good idea.
So can you explain what a DAW actually less, IS, in simple terms, for those who might be brand new to all of this?
Sure. Think of a DAW as a digital recording studio.
Okay.
It's where you can record, edit, mix, and master your music.
Ooh.
Like having a virtual mixing console, sound editor, effects rack, all in one software package.
Wow. That sounds pretty amazing. So much creative power at your fingertips.
It really is. And just like with real-world studios, there are tons of different DLOs out there.
Right.
Each one with its own strengths and weaknesses.
Makes sense.
But before we dive into those, I'm curious, what are your musical goals? What kind of music do you dream of creating?
Ooh, that's a good question. Because ultimately, that's going to guide you towards the right DLW, right?
Exactly.
Understanding your needs is the first step to finding the perfect tool for your creative journey.
Okay, so thinking about what you want to create is super important. Claudio mentioned a few other popular DIWs, like...
Studio One.
Right, which, I've heard good things about. Especially its...
User-friendly interface.
Yeah, it's supposed to be very intuitive. He also mentioned Ableton Live, which is really popular among...
electronic music producers.
DJs.
Yeah.
For sure. Then there's Audacity, which is...
completely free and open source.
Yeah, that's a fantastic option if you're...
on a tight budget.
Or just starting out and want to test the waters.
Totally.
And of course, we can't forget about Pro Tools.
The industry standard.
Yeah, it's been the gold standard in professional studios for years.
Renowned for its stability and comprehensive features.
It's definitely a powerful DW, but it can be quite an investment.
It can.
Finally, there's GarageBand, which comes...
free with Apple devices.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's super...
Yeah.
Especially for beginners. It's a great way to get started without feeling overwhelmed.
I agree. So as you can see, there's a whole universe of DAWs out there, each one with its unique strengths and target audience.
Quite a lot to take in.
It is, but it's also exciting, So many possibilities.
Definitely. So where should we go from here?
Well, I think in the next part of our deep dive, we should really dig into the key factors you should consider when making your decision.
Yeah, that's a great idea. We can break it down in a way that's easy to understand and helps you navigate this exciting but potentially overwhelming world of DAWs.
Sounds good to me. Okay, so we've talked about some popular DAWs and what makes them unique, but how do you actually decide which one is right for you? It still feels like there are so many options.
That's true. It can be a bit overwhelming, but think of it like this. Each day is like a different musical instrument, each with its own strengths and personality.
Okay.
The key is to find the one that resonates with your musical voice and creative style.
So, what are some key things to consider when making that choice? Where do we even begin?
Let's break it down into a few key areas. First, think about your musical style.
Okay.
What kind of music do you want to create? Are you drawn to electronic beats, orchestral scores, or something in between?
That makes sense. Claudio talked a lot about that in his video. Different DWs cater to different needs. He was really passionate about Reaper for its versatility, but I wonder if some DWs are better suited for specific genres.
You're right, some DWs definitely have strengths in certain areas. For example, if you're into electronic music production, a DW like Ableton Live or FL Studio might be a natural fit.
Okay.
They excel at MIDI sequencing, drum programming, and loop-based composition features that are essential for creating electronic music.
Okay, so if I'm dreaming of crafting the next big EDM track, I should be checking out Ableton or FL Studio. What makes them so special for that genre?
Ableton Live is known for its intuitive session view, which allows you to trigger loops and clips in real time. This makes it incredibly powerful for live performance and improvisation, something that's often a big part of electronic music. And FL Studio has a reputation for being incredibly user-friendly and having a workflow that's perfect for crafting catchy beats and melodies.
Okay.
It also comes with a lifetime update policy, so you're essentially making a one-time investment.
Wow, lifetime updates. That's pretty amazing. I can see why those features would appeal to electronic music producers. But what about someone like me who's more interested in recording acoustic instruments or maybe even a full band?
For that, you'd likely prioritize a DAW that excels in audio recording and editing.
Okay.
A DAW like Pro Tools, which is the industry standard for professional studios, or Logic Pro X, which is a great option for Mac users, would be strong contenders.
So those are more geared towards capturing and refining those live performances rather than building tracks from scratch electronically.
Exactly. They offer pristine audio quality, advanced editing features, and powerful mixing capabilities, everything you need to capture and polish those live performances.
That makes a lot of sense. It's starting to feel like less of a guessing game now. But how do you know where to even begin with trying these different Ds through you? They can be pretty complex.
That's where the beauty of free trials and demo versions comes in. Most DAWs offer a way to test them out before committing.
Oh, that's a relief. I was imagining having to buy a bunch of different Ds just to see which one I liked.
Definitely not. Take advantage of those trials. It's a great way to get a feel for the interface, experiment with the features, and see if the workflow feels natural to you.
Okay, so we've got musical style covered and we know to try before we buy. What else should we be thinking about?
Another important factor is your workflow.
Okay.
Every musician has a unique way of working, so you want to find a DAW that complements your creative process. Some DAWs are designed for a more linear, track-based approach, similar to traditional recording methods. Others, like Ableton Live, excel at loop-based composition and live performance, allowing you to build tracks in a more flexible and non-linear way.
So it's like finding a DAW that speaks your creative language, one that allows your ideas to flow naturally.
Precisely. Some people thrive in a structured environment, while others prefer a more free-flowing approach. Experiment with different DAWs and see which one feels most intuitive and inspiring for you.
And that's where those trials come in handy again. You can really get a sense of how a DAW feels and whether it fits your creative style.
Exactly. Don't be afraid to try out a few different options before settling on one. It's an investment in your creative journey, so it's worth taking the time to find the right fit.
Okay, so we've covered musical style and workflow. Are there any other big picture things to consider before we start diving into the nitty-gritty details of features and stuff?
Absolutely. Let's talk about cost.
Okay.
DAWs range in price from free to hundreds of dollars. It's important to be realistic about your budget and find a DAW that offers the best value for your money.
That makes sense. Claudio seemed to really appreciate Reaper's affordability. And remember, there are fantastic free options out there too, like Audacity and GarageBand.
Those are great starting points, especially for beginners or anyone on a tight budget. They offer a surprisingly robust set of features, especially considering they're free. You might even find that they meet all your needs.
I can definitely see the appeal of starting with a free option, no pressure, and you can really get a sense of what DAWs are all about.
Exactly. But it's also worth considering that as you progress, you might find yourself wanting more advanced features or a more specialized workflow, and that's perfectly fine.
So it's kind of like leveling up in a video game. You start with the basic tools and then unlock more powerful ones as you gain experience.
That's a great analogy. And the great thing is, you can often upgrade to a more advanced version of the same DW or transition to a different DAW altogether if your needs change down the line.
It's reassuring to know that you're not locked into one DW forever. You can always adapt and evolve as your musical journey progresses.
Exactly. It's all about finding the right tool for the job at each stage of your creative development.
Okay, so we've got musical style workflow and cost covered. What else should we add to our DAW checklist?
Let's talk about compatibility.
Okay.
This is especially important if you're just getting started. You'll want to make sure the DAW you choose is compatible with your computer's operating system, whether it's Windows or Mac.
Right, because the last thing you want is to fall in love with a DAW only to find out it doesn't run on your computer.
Exactly. And it's not just about the operating system. You'll also want to make sure your computer has enough processing power and RAM to run the DAW smoothly. Some DAWs can be quite demanding on your system, especially if you're working with large projects or lots of virtual instruments and effects.
So it's like making sure your car has enough horsepower to handle the road you're driving on.
That's a great way to put it. You don't want to be stuck with a sluggish system that can't keep up with your creative flow.
Okay, compatibility checked. Now I'm really curious to dive into the features of different DAWs. But before we get there, is there anything else we should consider from a big picture perspective?
Yes, one more important factor to think about is the overall user experience. This is a bit more subjective, but it can make a big difference in how much you enjoy using a particular DAW.
What do you mean by user experience?
It's about how intuitive and inspiring the DAW feels to you.
Okay.
Is the interface easy to navigate? Do the features and tools make sense? Do you find yourself getting lost in the menus, or does everything flow naturally?
It's like the difference between a well-designed kitchen and one that's cluttered and inefficient.
Exactly. You want a DAW that feels like a creative playground, not a confusing maze.
Hmm.
And again, this is where those free trials come in handy. You can really get a feel for a DAW and see if it clicks with you before committing.
So it's all about finding a DAW that feels good to use, one that inspires you to create and doesn't get in the way of your ideas.
Precisely. It should feel like an extension of your musical mind, not a barrier to your creativity.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. Musical style workflow, cost compatibility, and user experience. I'm starting to get a much clearer picture of what to look for in a DAW.
That's great. And now we've laid the foundation, we can start diving into the specifics of different DAWs and their features.
I'm ready to explore. Let's see what these DAWs have to offer. All right, so we've covered a lot of ground when it comes to choosing a DAW. We've talked about musical style workflow, cost compatibility, and even the overall user experience. I'm feeling a lot more confident about navigating the world of DAWs now.
That's great to hear. It's all about finding that right tool that lets you express those musical ideas.
For sure. But with so many options out there, it can still feel kind of daunting to narrow it down. Any tips on how to make that final decision?
Well, it's kind of like standing in a music store surrounded by all these amazing instruments. Each one is calling out to you.
Oh, like that.
You know, the key is to listen to your intuition and see which one speaks to your creative soul.
So how do we translate that feeling into a practical choice?
Let's revisit some of those DAWs we talked about and see how they line up with different goals and preferences. We'll start with electronic music production.
Okay, so if I'm dreaming of crafting like those pulsating beats and synth-driven melodies, where should I begin my search?
For electronic music, Ableton Live is often considered the go-to. It's known for its intuitive session view, where you can trigger loops and clips in real time.
Cool.
Perfect for those who love to improvise and experiment on the fly.
It's like having a virtual DJ set up right at your fingertips.
Right.
I can see why that would be so appealing to electronic music producers.
Exactly. And Ableton's deep integration with MIDI controllers makes it great for anyone who likes to get hands-on with their music.
Yeah.
Plus, it has a huge library of built-in instruments and effects, so you have a ton of sonic possibilities right from the start.
Ableton Live sounds like a powerhouse for electronic music.
Yeah.
Are there any other strong options in that space?
For sure. FL Studio is another popular choice, especially for those who are new to music production. It's known for being super user-friendly and having a really intuitive workflow.
I've heard good things about FL Studio's step sequencer. Is that something that makes it unique?
Definitely. The step sequencer is awesome for creating those intricate drum patterns and melodic phrases. It's very visual and makes it easy to program complex rhythms and melodies.
Plus, I remember you mentioned that FL Studio has that lifetime update policy.
Well, yeah.
That's a big deal, right?
Huge bonus.
Especially if you're just getting started.
It makes it a really attractive option.
Yeah.
So Ableton Live and FL Studio sound like great choices for electronic music. What about for those of us who are more into recording live instruments or vocals?
Ah, if you're all about capturing authentic live performances, then you need a DW that excels in audio recording, editing, and mixing.
Okay.
In that arena, Pro Tools is the king. It's been the industry standard in pro studios for decades.
The Rolls-Royce of DAWs.
Exactly. It's known for pristine audio quality, rock-solid stability, and a seriously comprehensive feature set.
But I imagine that level of professional power comes with a pretty hefty price tag.
It's definitely a premium option. But for those who are serious about audio production and want the absolute best in terms of performance and features, Pro Tools is worth considering. Are there any alternatives that offer a similar level of quality but are maybe a bit easier on the wallet?
Absolutely. Logic Pro X is a fantastic option if you're a Mac user.
Okay.
It offers comparable audio recording and editing power to Pro Tools, but at a much more affordable price.
I've heard great things about Logic's intuitive workflow and the huge collection of instruments and effects that come with it.
It's a really well-rounded DAW, and its tight integration with macOS makes for a smooth experience for Apple users.
So if you're looking for those pro-grade audio recording and editing features but don't need every single bell and whistle of Pro Tools, Logic Pro X is a strong contender. But what about those who are just starting out? Any recommendations for beginner-friendly DIWs?
For beginners, user-friendliness and affordability are key. GarageBand, which comes free with all Apple devices, is a great way to dip your toes into music production.
Right.
Incredibly intuitive, fun to use, and surprisingly powerful for a free DAW.
It's like a mini recording studio right in your pocket.
Exactly. And it's a great way to learn the basics of recording, editing, and arranging music without being overwhelmed by a complex interface.
I remember my first time using GarageBand. It was so fun just messing around with loops and different sounds. And for those on Windows or looking for something a little more feature-rich, there's also Studio One Prime.
Good one.
Yeah.
Studio One Prime is the free version of the full Studio One DIW. It offers a great balance of features and ease of use.
Okay, cool. So we've covered some great options for electronic music producers, audio recording folks, and beginners. But there's one DIW we haven't mentioned in a while that seems to fit into multiple categories.
Reaper. Yeah. Yes, Claudio's favorite.
Right.
Reaper is a bit of a chameleon in the DIY world. Incredibly versatile, customizable, and surprisingly affordable.
You can even use the free trial indefinitely, right?
That's right. That's a big part of what makes it so appealing to such a wide range of users, from beginners to pros.
So what is it about Reaper that makes it so versatile? What can it do that other DIWs can't?
It's not necessarily that it can do things other DAWs can't,
Yeah.
but it's more about its flexibility and customizability. You can really tailor the workflow to your specific needs.
Like a blank canvas for your creative process.
Exactly. Plus, it's so lightweight and efficient that it can run smoothly on even modest computers.
So if you're looking for a DO that you can really make your own, that can adapt to your workflow and grow with you as your skills develop, Reaper is definitely worth looking into.
Absolutely. And it's got a vibrant online community with tons of support tutorials and custom scripts to make it even more powerful.
Wow, Reaper sounds like it has a lot to offer. No wonder Claudio was so enthusiastic about it.
It's a unique DW with a loyal following, and its affordability and flexibility make it a great option for anyone, regardless of what kind of music you make or your experience level.
Okay, so we've explored a variety of DAWs, each with its unique strengths and target audience. I feel a lot more informed and excited about starting my own DW journey now.
That's fantastic. Choosing a W is an important step, but remember, it's just the beginning. The real fun starts when you actually start creating.
So what's the best way to approach this next stage? Any advice for those of us ready to dive in?
My best advice is to pick a DW that sparks your interest and just start exploring. Don't be afraid to experiment, play with sounds, and see where your creativity takes you.
It's like being handed the keys to a musical wonderland.
Exactly. And as you get more comfortable with your doobie, you'll discover so many ways to express yourself and bring those musical ideas to life.
And remember, there's no right or wrong way to do it. It's all about what works for you and having fun along the way.
Absolutely. The most important thing is to enjoy the journey and let your creativity flow.
Okay, so we've covered so much in this deep dive. We've explored the world of W's, talked about the key things to consider when choosing one, and even got some specific recommendations based on different goals and preferences.
It's been a really great exploration. I hope you feel empowered to choose a DIDU that aligns with your creative vision and inspires you to make incredible music.
Now, as we wrap up this episode, I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder as you set off on your DAW adventure. Imagine you found that perfect DAW. It's intuitive, it's inspiring, it feels like an extension of your musical mind. What will you create with it? What musical worlds will you bring to life? Let that question be your guide as you step into this exciting world of music production, happy music making.